So since we're pulling a very small file size from that sensor, we can get a faster frame rate. Now this is a 3 megapixel camera example here. A 3 megapixel camera can do 15 frames a second. Notice the total field of view is getting 2 frames a second, and each one of these are getting 12 frames a second, which means that camera is outputting 38 frames a second, which we can do because we're taking smaller regions off the sensor. If you guys have more questions about this, I'll be happy to field them at lunch. I don't want to dive down this too far because this is a unique feature that's not too integrated by our NVR partners. Typically, an NVR partner will take the full field of view, and then they'll allow you to duplicate that image multiple times and zoom into different regions of that picture. It's the same concept, but the difference is this way gives you better. Maximizes your bandwidth efficiency and storage efficiency, and can increase your frame rate if that is needed. If you have an application where you have a need like this, let me know. I can work with you to find an NVR that does support this, or get the NVR you need to support it to support it. Digital pan tilt zoom. This is fun. So our EVP of sales and marketing was sitting down with one of the inventors of the pan tilt zoom camera about a year and a half ago. Sat down in a meeting with him to discuss where the technology is going, because they knew each other from a prior lifetime. And the guy who invented the pan tilt zoom camera said, and I quote, "With cameras like this, I don't understand why people buy pan tilt zoom cameras anymore. With cameras like this, why would somebody still buy a PTZ?" I think it's a logical question, but I still think there's a room in the marketplace for PTZs when you're out to that 50x and 100x optical zoom. That's about it though. If you're going from 15 to 25x optical zoom, it's not needed. Walmart, for example, has 24 cameras in their parking lots. If any of you have seen a Walmart in North America, or I don't know if Walmart's over here, but they have these camera trees where they just have cameras and cameras and cameras mounted on these things. 24 cameras per store on average. Walmart is working on deploying 180 technology so that they can zoom into any part of this field of view, and notice there's your sensor division, and look and get the detail that they need. They go from 24 analog cameras to 2 180-degree cameras. Let me show you the fun part. What type of car is this right here? No, can't tell? What's that? Do you have those in Europe?
Yeah.
You got it. It's a PT Cruiser. And it's blue. Now, with a pan tilt zoom camera, could you have saw this? Absolutely. If you zoomed in and this was your field of view, do you know what you missed though?
Everything else.
What this old lady was doing, who was robbing that car at the moment. She's a well-known scoundrel. Over here, you're missing this guy about to be hit by this truck. You're missing this person over here trying to put something in the back of her car that she stole. All because you're curious what a PT Cruiser looks like. And that's Sergey's car. Somebody crossing over here with a grocery cart. If they got hit by a car, do you think you've got pretty good evidence that that was happening? What are the odds of a PTZ camera being in that spot at that time? What are the odds that one of their 24 analog cameras were in that spot at any given time? The benefit of these cameras are comprehensive, general, situational awareness. They're not used for license plate capturing. They're not used for facial recognition. The purpose of these panoramic cameras, where's the one that you get? Can you hold that up for me, please? Can we hold that up? The purpose of this camera is to give you general, situational awareness in a wide open space so you can see everything at a time. Any questions with that? Cool, thanks. All right, 10 megapixel camera. Everybody questioned us why we're coming out with a 10 megapixel camera. Why do that? Why do that? The whole industry is going to HD, and everybody's just going to stop and buy 1080p cameras. I beg to differ. DFW Airport, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, the second largest airport in the world, bought the first 400 10-megapixel cameras off the line. The reason they bought them was because of a unique technology in the camera, which is our dual mode, 10 megapixel, 1080p. This camera has two modes. One, it has the full 10 megapixel full 10 megapixel resolution. At spec says 6 frames a second. In reality, it's 6.6 frames per second. Or you can bin it, crop it, do 1080p at a full 30 frames a second. DFW Airport is putting in all these cameras at each one of the checkpoints because they want to record in the HD TV resolution at 15 frames a second, but they need that 10 megapixel resolution in the event something happens. They push a button, the software, which is nice, triggers the camera to go to the full 10 megapixel at 6 frames a second. Now you have 10 megapixel of video covering an area that was typically covered by 2 megapixel video, so they can see that forensic detail that they didn't have before. At that point, that 90 days of storage that they wanted doesn't matter anymore. They need that detail. So for example, if I click a 1080p image, notice you can read the census, you can read church. Come over here, you can see, if you know Payless, you know it's a Payless shoe store. Not really reading that street sign though. Versus the 10 megapixel mode. There's your census. There's the federal government promoting our 10 megapixel camera. There's your word church. There's Payless Shoe Source, and there's Luis, the street name. That's the same camera, folks, just different modes that you're going to run it in. You get to pick your poison, if you will. Our VP of International Sales basically says this is the last camera you'll ever need to buy. And the reason for that, the jumpiness that you're seeing is because we recorded this early on and our software wasn't able to take it. We record it with our own setup utility software. It doesn't jump on this anymore. So, our VP of International Sales, Steven Zorfati, some of you may know him, he basically says this is the last camera your company will ever need to buy. Because the price point, you're able to just go and buy all of these cameras. If you have a 20 camera installation, but only 5 of them require 10 megapixel, you put those 5 at 10 megapixel. The other 15, you put them at 1080p. Which research is saying by 2014, more than 50% of all cameras purchased in 2014 will be 1080p or higher resolution. 1080p will be the next standard resolution. One of the other features on this dual mode camera is binning. Now binning is not something we invented. It's been around for a while. It's in this camera. It's in Sony's security cameras. It's in Pelco's security cameras. Binning is taking your full field of view, running it in quarter resolution, and summing the light value of each 4 pixels that you average together. So when you go from full resolution to quarter resolution, you're taking every 2 pixel by 2 pixel block and averaging them together. You go down to quarter resolution. The benefit of quarter resolution was future-proofing a system early on when JPEG was only available. You ran it in quarter res because you could only afford 2 terabytes of storage, and then when you could afford more storage, you bumped it from quarter res up to full res resolution. With binning, you run it in quarter resolution, so instead of 10 megapixel, you run it at 2.5 megapixel, but you get the low light performance of 2.5 megapixel. So what that means is a similar concept to our dual sensor camera, where you've got 10 megapixel during the day, 2.5 megapixel at night, giving you better low light performance. So there's 3 modes. You can be 10 megapixel all the time, you can be 10 megapixel during the day, and 2.5 megapixel at night, same field of view, where you can run it into 1080p mode. Any questions with that? All right, on our new cameras, do we have any of the compact series here? All right, well, you guys are familiar with these cameras. These are 2.5 inches long. Our new compact series is that size, 1.25 inches long. They're faster, they're more powerful, and they're less expensive than these. How you like that? A little smaller, better performance, and less expensive. The compact cameras, since they have more power, they have more features. These features I'm going to speak about are only on the compact cameras and the newer generation of cameras that we're coming out with. We do have a list available. I can provide that to you later. I don't want to go through it all right now because you'll forget it anyway. But privacy masking. Simply put, you have a spot that you want to take off. Of course, since we're doing privacy masking at the camera, you cannot recover the video that was masked out after the fact. If you have the possibility of needing to recover that video, like in Germany, there's they have a law that says if something is happening, you have the ability to remove the privacy mask and see what's happening behind that blocked window. Okay? You have to do that at the software level if you're going to do that, not at the camera. You can block it, you can do any arbitrary shape, as you can see, down to 32 pixels by 32 pixels, a very small little block. Next is we've increased our motion detection at the camera for the compact series. Our older cameras that look like that have 64 motion detection zones. The new compact series has 1,024. A little bit of a difference. Of course, as processors become cheaper, we put them in a camera, we can put more toys on them. Flexible cropping. This is a huge advantage that Arecont Vision has that nobody else can do. And this is, we have the ability to crop images down to 2 pixels by 2 pixels in H.264 or 1 pixel by 1 pixel in JPEG. Okay? So what that means is before, we were restricted to 32 pixels wide by 32 pixels wide by 64 pixels vertically. Now we're down to 1 or 2 pixels depending on the compression type. The advantage Arecont Vision has is our H.264 algorithm, which allows you to apply H.264 to any size picture. So if you crop part of the picture, you can still do H.264, which nobody else in the market can do. If you use somebody else's cameras, you have to crop it down to another predefined resolution. You just can't get a wide aspect ratio or a vertical aspect ratio. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Let's talk about H.264. H.264 is the standard in almost every first world region of the world for transmitting video to your house. H.264 is MPEG-4 Part 10. So MPEG and H.264 are the same thing. H.264 is the most advanced version of MPEG. MPEG, Moving Pictures Experts Group, was developed so you could watch TV at your house. It was developed so they could get this video to your house as quickly and efficiently as possible. More commonly today, outside the security industry, our kids and friends think of MPEG as the video that they're watching when they're watching it on YouTube or on any kind of other web streaming based application. H.264 was developed for high-def TV. That was its ultimate push to move to go forward, because now we have to take what once was 0.3 million pixels on your low-def TV up to 2.1 million pixels, but get it through the same pipeline. And that's where H.264 came in. Now, as you know in the security space, when you go from JPEG to MPEG, you lose image quality, right? Well, that's a problem. And the reason that's a problem is because it's false. The reason you lose image quality is because in the analog world, we were stuck in bid specs. Honeywell guy would come in and say, I can give you a DVR with 1 terabyte, and that's going to last you 30 days. And the Bosch guy's going to come in and say, well, I can give you a DVR with 1 terabyte, it's going to last you 45 days, and it's going to cost you the same thing. And then the Pelco guy would come in and say, well, I can give you a DVR for 60 days of recording with 1 terabyte for the same price as those two people. If you're using the same hardware and the same equipment and the same codecs are available to everybody, what's the difference? Is what?
The image quality.
The image quality, because?
Compression.
Because of the compression. This guy over here who's giving you 30 days of storage, I guarantee his image quality is better than this guy giving 45. And I guarantee this guy's better than this guy over here. As you increase, as they were getting into saying the bid side of things, saying ours is better, we can last longer, all they're doing is over-compressing the image guys, and that meant you lost image quality. Your end user lost image quality. Well, we don't need to do that anymore. With H.264, it is a lossless compression. A lossless compression. Look it up on Wikipedia. Look it up on an encyclopedia or whatever. It will say a lossless 7 to 12 times, which means you lose no image quality with H.264. But if you overcompress it, you will lose image quality. We give you that option in Arecont. There's 21 levels of compression. The default out of the camera, basically the middle third compression, you don't lose much image quality. It's all about the same, but your file size differs. Once you get to the top half of the quality side, with minimal compression, that's a really awesome picture. Once you get over here where you're over compressing, in my opinion, because bandwidth is a major concern, you'll start to lose image quality. But we give you that flexibility to make that your mind up there. So with our H.264, we developed it ourselves. We were the first one in the market by about a year and a half, and we're the only people that can apply it to any resolution camera whatsoever. So when we wrote this code, because we did our own H.264, we didn't outsource it, we wrote it ourselves, which means when you crop off 2 pixels, we're still in H.264. I just found this out. Familiar with the Sanyo camera? That is a 4 megapixel camera, but if you want H.264, you can only do 1080p. You can't do 4 megapixel. Or when you go to H.264, you have to lose frame rate or something else. Marec, 3 megapixel camera. They can do 15 frames a second in JPEG, same as Arecont. But in H.264, you can do 3 frames a second. That's the benefit of our H.264, because we kept our 3 pillars in mind: image quality, frame rate, and pricing. The H.264 cameras are only a few dollars more, a few euros more than the JPEG cameras. We still do sell JPEG because there are other NVRs out there that leverage the JPEG compression either for analytics or because they decompress it and compress it into their own proprietary. But right now, about 80% of our volume is H.264. Now, here's another kicker. Typically, when you're using an MPEG-based compression, it requires more CPU to decompress, right? So you can decompress less videos on the stream at one time. That's not true for ours. Ours actually requires less. This is a real screenshot. I took it myself with a 2 megapixel camera and a JPEG versus H.264. Now you're not going to see that drastic savings in every single NVR out there, but you will see a savings. There was an article written by a company based in Europe who manufactures megapixel cameras. I won't say who they are, but I will tell you they're not doing H.264 yet. That in 2008, when we released H.264, they released an article called The Hidden Truth, the hidden cost of H.264. And this article went on to talk about, you know what I'm talking about, yeah. This article went on to talk about that, yeah, while you're saving bandwidth and saving storage, the cost of bandwidth and storage are coming down so drastically that you don't need that anymore. In reality, when you go to H.264, you're going to need a really big super processor at each client station, and you have to buy more client machines to decompress this video, so your overall system cost is going to go up. Well, I wasn't a big fan of that article because it wasn't true, but it was true to the security industry who has only seen that. So we started to write an article. Our VP of Engineering, Dr. Corkin, who by the way is in the Guinness Book of World Records for developing artificial intelligence on FPGA-based processors. True story, I'll tell you later. He wrote an article that spoke about how Arecont Vision does our H.264, fully compliant, basic profile, and I started to write an article talking about where their article was wrong. And by the time we were ready to release this article, I said, you know what, it would be really great if we could just get some of our NVR partners to support our argument and put a couple pictures in here. So I reached out to 3 of our bigger partners, Milestone, ONSSI, which is a North American software, and Exact Technologies. Reached out to all of them and I said, hey, do me a favor, take pictures of our cameras with the CPU load in the Windows CPU load in the field of view from JPEG to H.264 and send me the pictures. So these pictures were taken by these companies and sent to me. Milestone went from 44% down to 33% when it went from JPEG to H.2. ONSSI, 42 to 23. 42 to 23 on Exact.
How many pictures per second was recorded?
These guys were only, it looks like they were, this was a 3 meg I think they had, so this was 12, 15 frames a second. This, they were replicating it 9 times on a quad a quad-core server, and then over here was another. This was a quad-core. That was a dual quad-core, and they were just doing one. So I mean, the machine does count. Now we have a MegaLab certification at Arecont Vision, which I'll talk a little bit more about, where we test our NVR hardware software and certify it as this is a full integration. And basically up to 16 or 25 cameras on the server that we supply, which is a single quad-core machine, they're usually able to do anywhere from 12 to 16 cameras easily. And once they start getting up to 20 or 25 cameras on a single screen, which in my opinion is useless video at that point because you're looking at something that's this big, they started to have a little bit of trouble. But most of them can do up to like 12 to 16 cameras and be able to produce less than 80% CPU. Well, when our NVR partners sent this back to us, we also found out that they were emailing the other camera manufacturers saying, your article's wrong. So my half of the article, which was saying that their article was wrong, was taken out, and then we released the article just from our VP of Engineering, Dr. Corkin, who spoke about just how we implement our H.264 and how it's different. To date, I don't know if anybody else is doing it the way that we're doing it. And the reason I think that's true is because 3 codec companies who writes the codecs to sell to other camera manufacturers asked us to help them develop their next codec so they could sell to our competition, which we politely said no. One of those competitors happened to start with an I. All right, so estimates of what you can expect from Arecont's H.264. A conservative estimate is from JPEG to H.264, you will use 1/4 of the bandwidth and storage. 1/4, which means if you're working on a 20 terabyte, 16 camera system in JPEG, you're now looking at 5 terabytes. 5 terabytes cost what these days? A few €100? Pretty cheap. Don't use USB attached storage. I'm not saying to do that. Get quality, security grade. Realistically, out of the box, you don't change any adjustments, you're looking at 1/6 to 1/8 of the bandwidth and storage. So now, instead of 20 terabytes, you're now looking at basically 2 or 4 terabytes. Shoot, there's individual drives that are almost that big. Aggressively, and we'll show you